and the yellow tier.
We would need 2 consecutive weeks in the yellow tier to descend tiers.
We'll know when the weekly numbers come out next Tuesday if we'll move into the yellow tier. If the adjusted case rate numbers stay where they are or go even lower, we could move into the yellow tier a week from today. Moving into that tier will mean indoor and outdoor venues can all host more people. Capacity limits will increase across the board. Meantime, Fletcher says the vaccination effort is now moving away from the super sites, instead getting the vaccines to people where they are.
We're also making a strong push in the month of June on our mobile sites. We already have more than 100 mobile vaccine events that are planned.
Another bit of good news, because the county now has plenty of vaccine, the effort to vaccinate workers in American-owned factories just across the border is going well.
We started it on Monday, May 24th, and as of yesterday, we've been able to vaccinate over 6,447 workers.
Plus, Nora Vargas says the effort to vaccinate the county's Latinx population, especially in the South Bay, has gone very well. The next big step in our journey out of COVID will come on June 15th, when the state tiers system expires.
Next week, we'll probably share with you what life will look like from things we're doing from a public health standpoint post June 15th.
June 15th, a date that all of us will no doubt remember for the rest of our lives. The day when our collective nightmare that began in March of 2020 finally begins to recede into history. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Number 12. Look at San Diego's doing well. Another one for San Diego. All right.
Yeah, San Diego is well represented in California's vaccine lottery. Governor Gavin Newsom was on hand as the first 15 people were chosen. There are 3 local winners. Each will get $50,000. More winners will be picked later this month, and a lucky few will win the big prize of $1.5 million. The lottery is for the first round of vaccines. Scientists are still trying to figure out if booster shots will be needed down the road and who will need them the most. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman went to the experts.
So the less the virus circulates, the less critical boosters are.
Infectious disease expert Shane Crotty at the La Jolla Institute for Immunology is one of the nation's leading researchers on COVID-19.
And also a paper from NIH grantees from La Jolla just came out. Okay, the studies that you quote from Crotty.
Dr. Anthony Fauci has cited his research during congressional hearings, and when it comes to booster shots, Crotty says drug makers like Moderna have already been developing and testing them.
And the booster shots did work, and they also had a variant booster shot, and that one worked too.
So booster shots will likely be available. The big question, though, when or if they'll be needed. Crotty says it comes down to 2 things. 1, how long the immunity from the vaccines lasts, and 2, the variants.
So several of these variants of concern are more worrisome than the original strain, and some of them escape immunity to some degree. So essentially the variants are tougher to stop than the original virus, and so the vaccine might not last as long.
Crotty says there's a 50-50 chance that booster shots will be recommended by the winter of this year, but they might not be for everyone right away.
That there's a risk assessment that says, okay, if you're over 65, you should get a booster immunization at this point. And if you're under 65, you can wait longer, maybe another year or something.
He says the best case scenario is that the vaccines last a couple of years, but we just don't know that yet.
Basically, we just need more time. We just don't have a clear historical reference point for saying, oh, here's how long immunity lasts after you've had an RNA vaccine. We're having to measure that and watch that every month as time goes by.
Booster shots could also depend on infection rates.
SARS-2 is not going to be eradicated. It's too widespread and too easily spread from person to person.
San Diego County is nearly 3/4 of the way to its goal of herd immunity, but he says it's a key way to stop the virus, especially in internationally traveled areas like San Diego.
Herd immunity also isn't just this line that you suddenly cross, and nothing happens before it, and then everything happens as soon as you cross it. There's a progression there, and I think most people think we're in the range where herd immunity should be having an effect now, and it should just get better and better the more people you can get vaccinated.
Crotty says some areas will likely not get to herd immunity and in turn continue to see pockets of outbreaks. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Some of the vaccine superstations are phasing out in San Diego, but there are still plenty of places to get your shot. We have a map of current locations at our KPBS vaccine tracker. We're also following the progress toward county goals. So to get there, just go click on the vaccines link that you can find on our homepage. Nursing homes were a point of concern early in the pandemic. Problems over proper care go well beyond COVID-19 and are an ongoing issue statewide. Now, as KPBS's Amita Sharma reports, an idea is being floated that critics say would gut nursing home oversight.
I'm still dealing with the effect from what happened at this place.
Rob Halliburton landed at Palomar Vista Nursing Home in Escondido last spring, needing care for a foot wound. The 57-year-old says it turned out to be the worst place for him.
I almost got my foot amputated because they wasn't taking care of my wound and my treatment.
And Halliburton says his experience was just one example of poor treatment at the facility.
I witnessed everything from the wound care to not being changed to being treated unfairly, being not listened to. I witnessed so many things that would make you cry. Literally make you cry.
Felicia Barbado is a nursing home inspector for the California Department of Public Health. Barbado told state legislators last year that stories of inadequate care are commonplace.
I have been well aware of the poor infection control practices and quality of care in many of our nursing homes prior to the pandemic. The high rates of death in these facilities during the pandemic unfortunately comes as no surprise.
Despite all of this, CDPH is now mulling a post-pandemic remodel of its oversight system being pushed by the nursing home industry. The agency's draft plan would require inspectors to visit nursing homes a few times each month to advise staff on how to reverse substandard care. Carl Steinberg, medical director of Life Care Center of Vista and Carlsbad by the Sea Care Center, says the idea would be a dramatic improvement over the current inspection system.
It's very much, gotcha. I found, the temperature of the breakfast was 2 degrees below what it should have been, or those kinds of things.
Steinberg says his support of the new approach has nothing to do with his other role as chief medical officer of Mariner Healthcare. The group is being sued by the state for understaffing its Northern California nursing homes, falsifying its ratings to boost profits, and failing to report any of the numerous sexual assaults at its facilities. Steinberg says his advocacy for revamping the state inspection system began long before the lawsuit.
I do think a little bit more sort of humanity and collaboration would potentially go a long way.
CDPH declined an interview, but in an email said the principle was to establish a more frequent presence in nursing homes. The email goes on to say that if the new method is implemented, CDPH will still carry out its, quote, distinct regulatory enforcement role. Advocates for nursing home residents call this an impossible promise.
What are they giving up? And I think the obvious answer is they'd be giving up enforcement. They'd be giving up complaint investigation.
Tony Chicotel is a staff lawyer for California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform. He says it already takes CDPH an average of 636 days to investigate complaints against the facilities statewide. Chicotel contends that having the agency's inspectors take on consulting roles would also pose a giant conflict of interest.
Equivalent of adopt a sniff would be if you got pulled over by a police officer for speeding and the police officer jumped in the car with you and said, okay, let's drive around and you show me your skills and I'll critique you.
Advocates say inspectors have told them they are against the idea. A lawyer for the CDPH Inspectors Union did not return phone calls. Meanwhile, Rob Halliburton says his foot still hasn't recovered. A CDPH investigation into his claims concluded Palomar Vista failed to provide him with proper wound care. It's why he's opposed to a change that would reduce CDPH's watchdog role.
I think that would be the worst thing ever, period. Because we need them to be our police. That's what they should be, our police. Almost like when you call 911, the police show up and take care of you.
Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
In a statement, Palomar Vista said it couldn't discuss Halliburton's claims, but added it earnestly disagrees with the suggestion that anyone at the facility was ignored or mistreated, and said its staff is well trained in wound care. Another month has arrived, with many San Diegans struggling to pay rent. The county has a new eviction moratorium in effect, but KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel says housing advocates are demanding more.
I was broken. I did not know where to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had lost my job, and I was worried to be evicted.
Despite a statewide eviction moratorium in place until June 30, Patricia Mendoza's landlord has tried to evict her at least 3 times during the pandemic. Like many, Mendoza didn't know what her rights were, but ACE Action, the local Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, stepped in to help her. Now that the county approved an eviction ban for 60 days after the state reopens on June 15, tenants struggling to pay rent have a little more breathing room. But Jania Wall, an advocate for ACE, says landlords can't be trusted.
Can't count on the landlords to do what is ethically right or legally right.
Misha Sanders and Tanisha Brown are the prime example. The couple has been asked to vacate their apartment in City Heights.
Since COVID has happened, our jobs are no more.
Brown says they owe $6,000 in back rent. Their property owners, Constellation Management, have given them until June 15 to move out. And that's not all. Brown says the living conditions in her apartment for the last 4 years have been inhabitable.
We've been infested with rats, not just little mice, but rats.
Under the city's ordinance, 20% of rent will be forgiven for tenants with back rent. And through the state's rent relief program, renters are expected to recoup 80%.
If you wouldn't allow your...
But ACE says it's not enough. The group is advocating for rent control and a ban on landlord abuse. Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
May was all about awareness for the Asian American and Pacific Islander community and mental health. KPBS race and equity reporter Christina Kim has reaction on how the two are intertwined, especially during the pandemic.
I really remember that moment. It seemed to be a day like any other. But then SDSU professor Nellie Tran felt a moment of fear she said she'll never forget. While driving through Poway, she saw 2 white men protesting, waving U.S. flags near a corner.
I was in the car, and as I was approaching the stoplight, it turned red, and I would be the first car at the stoplight. And I had this thought that maybe it would be better if I ran the light.
She ended up stopping, but the moment has stuck with her.
For the entire red light, I busied myself, looking at my phone and trying not to look over at them because I was afraid. And I almost felt lucky that nothing happened.
Tran isn't alone in her fear. According to 2 recent reports from the National Urban League and Stop AAPI Hate, 75% of Asian Americans feel the U.S. is more dangerous because they are Asian, a fear largely driven by the spike in the number of anti-Asian American hate crimes. Ann Saw of the Asian American Psychological Association is a lead researcher on both these studies. She found that 1 in 5 Asian Americans report racial trauma symptoms after experiencing a racist incident.
It could be depression, it could be anxiety, anger, decreased self-esteem, avoidance or numbing, intrusive thoughts.
In response to the rise in acts of racism, San Diego County has set up reporting hotlines, introduced a yellow whistle campaign to help people feel safe, and encourage people to report incidents. And the act of reporting is something researchers like SAW say can help communities heal.
We found that after reporting to Stop AAPI Hate's reporting portal, Asian Americans reported a reduction in racial trauma symptoms.
That's because a key part of reporting is just talking through the experience and taking control. Another way is seeking therapy, which according to the National Urban League study is a need that's not being met, with more than 6 out of 10 Asian Americans not having access to mental health resources. And that's something Nellie Tran is working on fixing. As a professor at San Diego State University, Tran is training the next generation of diverse therapists to bring their cultures into their practice.
We asked them to talk about their past experiences and not to be ashamed of, experiences of poverty and migration, and to really think about how those experiences influence who they are today, and that they can be together with them rather than top down.
Last Friday, California Representative Judy Chu of Pasadena reintroduced legislation aimed at ending mental health stigma in the AAPI community. Christina Kim, KPBS News.
A local farming family of Japanese descent has overcome legal barriers, internment camps, and most recently, the pandemic. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne tells us about the Yasukochi family and how their farm has survived to this day.
Donald Yasukochi and his daughter Brianne walk the farmland that once belonged to his parents and grandparents.
We're growing corn, we have artichokes, asparagus, we have raspberries, blueberries, strawberries.
The land that now grows a variety of fruits and vegetables has a rich history that began in Japan. Donald Yasukochi's grandparents were farmers in Japan before they decided to leave their farm behind and head to America.
When they came over, they weren't just welcome with open arms.
The California Alien Land Law banned aliens ineligible for citizenship from owning land. But not everyone agreed with the law that worked against immigrants, and generous American farmers gave the Yasukochis a chance. They were able to settle in Oceanside in 1924, where they began dehydrating chilies.
Here's a picture of my grandfather, and he is the one standing on the truck, and these are the dried chilies. He was known as the king of the chilies.
But everything the Yasukochis built came to a halt after the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Here is the actual bombing of the mighty USS Arizona.
If you had a Japanese face and you had Japanese ancestry, even though you're an American citizen, they interned you. It put you in jail.
Yasukochi's grandparents were separated from each other along with their children and sent to internment camps in New Mexico and Arizona.
Most of the Japanese American families lost everything, and they had to come back. When they were released, I think they gave them $25.
When the Yasukochis returned to their farm, they were relieved to find that Mr. Gray, a generous Escondido school teacher, had taken care of their land.
My mother used to run us out to Escondido, and Oceanside to Escondido is not 20 minutes like nowadays. It was like 2.5 hours in a back road, and it took forever to get out there. But we had to go see Mr. Gray. We had to take him our fresh corn. My mother was just always hey, you know what? We're giving back. We have to give back.
The Yasukochis expanded into Carlsbad and began growing and selling wholesale tomatoes.
Semi-truckloads full of tomatoes.
In the late 80s, Yasukochi family farms transitioned from wholesale to growing a variety of different fruits and vegetables to sell in farmers markets. Now into the fourth generation of the Yasukochi family, Brianne Yasukochi had to help the family farm overcome a new hurdle, the pandemic.
When the pandemic hit, we were like, okay, the farmers markets are closing down, we might have to shut down because we don't have a viable source of income.
With pallets of fresh produce, the Yasukochis had to get creative and decided to promote their community-supported agriculture boxes. The CSA boxes come stocked with fresh produce and are delivered for free.
They saw it online, on Facebook, and I don't know what they do, Instagram, and my daughter was doing it. And before you know it, the phone was ringing off the hook.
At a time when stores were low on food, the CSA boxes went viral and the Yasukochis had to meet the demand. But the boxes didn't only help the Yasukochi farm stay in business. They also gave nearby farmers a chance to include their produce in the boxes.
We work, I would say, with 5 to 7 different farmers throughout the week, depending on the season and what they have. And so giving them a place to sell their produce while at the same time giving the customers the connection of where the produce is coming from has been a win-win for everybody.
The CSA boxes range from $25 to $35 and include free delivery anywhere in San Diego County. Customers can also add locally grown flowers, olive oil, and jams. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
And that story is an example of the rich storytelling you'll get from KPBS News. And all of it can be found on the KPBS YouTube page. In addition to our reporter stories, you can also find special programs like Crossing South and stream episodes of KPBS Evening Edition. The San Diego Public Library is kicking off its summer reading program. KPBS education reporter Joe Honk spoke to one librarian about how reading can help children of all ages readjust to the post-pandemic world.
With this year's Reading Challenge, San Diego's librarians are hoping children will be able to explore new worlds after a year of being stuck at home. Emily Derry is the public library's youth and engagement coordinator.
The theme is Reading Colors Your World. So it encourages readers to be creative, try new things, explore art,
and find beauty in diversity.
Participants can earn prizes by finishing 10 books or reading for 10 hours, or they can join a variety of activities like virtual story times.
They're really kind of literacy-based activities, but they include, writing a letter to someone, telling a story aloud to someone, so appreciating, oral storytelling, and watching a movie adaptation of a book read.
Prizes include books and free passes to several San Diego museums. Derry hopes this year's program can boost reading skills, especially in those students who have fallen behind this year.
Before the pandemic, we already knew that in the summer following third grade, for example, students lose nearly 20% of their school year gains in reading. And that loss can increase with age through elementary and middle school.
The summer reading program is open to children of all ages. Participants can sign up online or at one of 25 city library branches. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
Getting your cocktails to go and expanded outdoor dining are not going away. Rachel Kim reports on a popular aspect of pandemic life that's sticking around.
Diners at Gale's restaurant in Pasadena are toasting to the news that California will continue to allow expanded outdoor dining and to-go cocktails after COVID restrictions are lifted on June 15.
We're just thrilled. I couldn't be happier for myself and for all my wonderful restaurateurs in this city.
Gail Cole is the owner of Gale's restaurant. She tells us without outdoor dining, she would not have been able to stay open through the pandemic. Governor Gavin Newsom made the announcement that tents, parklets, and alfresco dining can stay.
And to allow these businesses to expand their footprint and expand their opportunity to recover from this pandemic, and moreover, to create new business opportunities in the future.
Cole tells us her tent, heaters, and other associated things cost her well over $100,000. She said that investment will continue to pay off because of what customers have told her.
We have some guests that'll go inside, but if they have a choice, it's always on the patio. They like it outside. It's safer.
Newsom said that outdoor dining expansions will continue through at least the end of the calendar year, which allows restaurants and bars to use sidewalks and parking lots. The sale of to-go alcoholic beverages will continue as well. Last year, the California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control eased restrictions on establishments.
So this will allow folks to continue to get the takeout. If you do takeout food, you'll be able to get the takeout cocktails.
We're still selling it. We're still people are doing it. People want to stay at home.
And that was Rachel Kim reporting. The drinks are flowing in Las Vegas, which is a big tourist destination for San Diegans. Lucy Kafanov shows us how the city is ending its COVID-19 restrictions and expecting a busy summer.
In downtown Las Vegas, a countdown to mark Sin City's comeback.
And it's officially open right now, my friends.
Pandemic restrictions now a thing of the past. Maskless tourists celebrating.
You just have to see it in order to believe it.
It feels good though to be back free. Hopefully everybody gets vaccinated and we back out here.
For the first time in over a year, visitors rocked out to live music. Casinos, restaurants, and hotels back to full capacity. Those plexiglass dividers meant to keep gamblers safe during the pandemic officially coming down. In most places, fully vaccinated visitors can now ditch the mask and scrap social distancing, but health experts worry not everyone will play by the rules.
Well, the challenge is to get people to actually wear their masks if they have not been vaccinated. It's on the honor system, and we have a lot of people coming to town who are on their first vacation in a year and a half.
But for a city so reliant on tourism, it's a tricky balance. Last year, the coronavirus pandemic turned Vegas into a ghost town. Casinos were ordered to shut their doors, costing thousands of jobs and billions in lost revenue. The Vegas jobless rate shot to 33% last April from 7% in March, one of the worst in the nation. Large trade shows and conventions came to a halt.
How critical are conventions to the Las Vegas economy?
They're so critical that what you see on the Strip would not make sense to build without meetings and conventions as a major component of that.
Conventions bring in big bucks and crucial weekday bookings, contributing more than $11 billion in 2019 alone. Next week, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority will debut its nearly $1 billion expansion to host America's first major trade show since the pandemic began.
World of Concrete, which is tens of thousands of people, will be here June 8th. It will be the first what we call a citywide event to happen in the United States.
It's an economic test where the stakes are high, even for a city accustomed to high stakes.
And that was Lucy Kafanov reporting. And that's all for this special edition of KPBS News. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and for all of us here at KPBS, thank you for joining us.